Can-
You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts, or on our YouTube channel, all over social media, or our morning newsletter, KCSN Daily, dedicated to your Kansas City Chiefs. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome to another episode of Outside the Trenches. I'm BJ Kissel, joined as always by my guys, Nick Leckey, former K-State All-American and Super Bowl champion with the New Orleans Saints, and then also our content manager at KC Sports Network, Mr. Tucker Franklin. We appreciate you for spending part of your day with us here, and we've got a special shout out to the presenting sponsor of this show and Five Farms Irish Cream Liquor. If you are in the Kansas City area and you are looking for a cool place to go, head up to Weston, Missouri, take a tour of the Holiday or McCormick Distillery, whatever you want to call it. Great people up there, proud sponsors of KC Sports Network, and we love working with them. And I absolutely love the Five Farms Irish Cream. So throw in a little coffee, throw in a little hot chocolate, as the weather's starting to turn a little bit. It's absolutely beautiful out there right now, guys. But hope everybody out there is doing well as we get ready for a weekend full of football before the Chiefs take on the Raiders on Monday night. We'll break it all down. But Nick, we'll start with you, man. How's the last week been for you?
It's been peachy. It's been really peachy. K-State did well. Chiefs did well. Chiefs ran the ball, so I'm pleased. I'm really pleased. I don't shout at my TV anymore.
You were fired up because you were keeping receipts, saying when they give Clyde Edwards-Helaire the ball and the running game the ball in general, good things tend to happen. And you were right. And I'm sure we'll get to that. So, Tucker, how's your last week been?
It's been good. Been getting all this content managed, you know how it is, and just making sure everyone gets what they need here at KC Sports Network. Got a lot of stuff out right now. We're going to have a lot more stuff coming up before the Monday night football game. Chiefs getting both of their weird day games out of the way early this season, which is interesting, and I think I kind of like it.
Yeah, and guys, I'm excited about this show, not only because we get probably our 8th or 9th show of Blind Nil, which Nick doesn't like to take credit for, but if this is your first time listening to this show, it's a little different than the other ones on the network, a little more laid back, a little more sarcastic, but Blind Nil, the way this show is set up is each one of us bring a different segment to the show that the other two don't know about, and then we talk about it. But for this one specifically, my Blind Nil segment is going to come from the comment section. So if you are watching this live on YouTube, send us your questions, your comments, and our last segment in today's show is going to be based on a comment that you guys send on something you want us talking about, preferably football and Chiefs related, but you never know with us. Nick's shaking his head. In the offseason, we get weird. We try to stay a little more on task here during the regular season. But guys, before we get to the Blind Nil segments, I saw this article on ESPN from Bill Barnwell, which is through basically the quarter of the season. It's not quite as clean saying that now with 17 games, but we'll still say the first quarter of the season. He's got his, award, his MVP, his comeback player of the year, coach of the year, offensive, defensive rookie of the years, and player of the year. And the first one that jumped out to me, first segment in the article, is defensive rookie of the year, his top 3 candidates. At number 3, Jalen Watson. From the Kansas City Chiefs. Bill Barnwell from ESPN has him at number 3 in the defensive rookie of the year conversation. Number 2, Tariq Woolen, the cornerback from the Seahawks, and number 1, Devin Lloyd from the Jaguars, which is interesting. I'm not going to say I pay a lot of attention to what's going on with some of the other guys like an Aiden Hutchinson up in Detroit, but pretty interesting that those are the 3 guys that he's got for his defensive rookie of the year. Tucker, I see your face. What is your response to that?
If you would have told me a Chiefs defensive rookie was on that list, Jalen Watson probably wouldn't have been the guy that I said. But he's played well. So it's not too surprising, but I thought you definitely were going to go with George Karlaftis. I thought you were going to drop that little name on us. He's played well. He's played well as well. He's got a lot of pressures. I think you've had a really good conversation with Trevor Sickleman from PFF about pressures being production. And I think that people do need to look at pressures a little bit more in that way. But yeah, that's kind of surprised me. But at the same time, I'm not surprised because he has been playing well. He has looked really good so far early on in the season.
And I think anytime you get a fumble six too, that's going to boost your radar. But I think just playing consistently too, I think that's the name of the game, especially at cornerback. It's really, like I said, what they did in Tampa was really good. The cornerbacks as a whole, they're physical. They make open field tackles, especially on Leonard Fournette. That's no easy task.
Yeah, I think in the article, the way that he explains, you can find it on ESPN.com. It's one of the ESPN insider stories, but he has Aiden Hutchinson listed. He's the only rookie with more than 2 sacks, but they all came in one game against the Commanders, who hand out free sacks like they're candy on Halloween, is what he said. But Hutchinson is actually 54th out of 58 qualifying edge rushers in pass rush win rate. And then he's got Trevon Walker listed, but hasn't even been the best first rounder or best rookie for the Jaguars. And then he also mentions Derek Stingley and Sauce Gardner has had their moments, but other guys have had, a bigger impact. And you look at the fact that, Jalen Watson made the biggest play in one of the biggest games, the most exciting games of the season so far, and the whole world was watching. People remember that stuff. So shout out to Jalen Watson, who stepped in well, as Trent McDuffie hopefully comes back in the next couple of weeks, which is crazy that we've spent the last 4 days talking about this Chiefs rookie class and the fact that the first pick that they made, who had been playing really, really well, isn't discussed. And I don't want to say as an afterthought, but the defense has been rolling. So it'll be even better when he steps in. But the other ones that are Chiefs specific that we can talk about, I did think it was a little interesting that Andy Reid is not listed under the top 3 for coach of the year based on Chiefs starting 3-1, and they lost a lot of dudes from last year, but they've got Kevin O'Connell from the Vikings, Mike McDaniel from the Dolphins, who should be not on this list because of how they handled Tua,
yes,
in my opinion.
100%.
But no surprise, number 1, Nick Sirianni with the Eagles. Anyone who's followed the NFL, Nick Sirianni is a name that you had heard for like 7-8 years, even when he was a wide receivers coach. Was a guy that people were talking about. Comeback player of the year, Jeff Okudah with the Lions, Khalil Mack with the Chargers, Saquon Barkley with the Giants. Defensive player of the year candidates, Max Crosby, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Nick Bosa. Offensive player of the year, Nick Chubb, Stephon Diggs, and Tyreek Hill at number 1. And then MVP, I ran through those real quick so we can get to this. MVP for Bill Barnwell. Number 3, Lamar Jackson.
Okay.
Quarterback for the Ravens, if you didn't know that. Number 2, Josh Allen with the Bills. Which means, number 1, he's got Patrick Mahomes as his top MVP candidate through the first 4 games of the season. Nick, you look perplexed. What are your thoughts?
I just think I know Josh Allen had the mess up versus the Dolphins, the bad pass. That I think you'll be looked upon when you're an MVP, right? It's got to be consistent, especially in the clutch. And with Mahomes, I think that's accurate. I mean, coming off the spin move, that's your Heisman moment, so to speak, right? Your MVP clip that he's going to have, kind of like the shot put. I like that. It is a bummer that it's mostly quarterbacks, and it makes sense because quarterbacks have the easiest influence, the hardest job to do, but they are just one person, a part of many. And I mean, Mahomes didn't have he had a decent game versus Indy. He's had some couple drops. But yeah, he's still learning, and I don't really give much credit to preseason or midseason awards, but it's a good pulse check for the past 4.
It's content.
Is that what it is? See, I'm anti. That's why I'm anti. I'm so I haven't bought it. I haven't bought in fully to the content thing. So yeah, so I get it. But yeah, it's a good discussion point, dude. It's a good jumping off point because I think Lamar too blew it versus Josh Allen, right? So he's ranked below Josh Allen. So it's one of those things where it's a total MVP is a team win.
For sure. Tucker, what's your response?
My response was to first look at the DraftKings odds for who's going to win MVP. Josh Allen favored right now at plus 275. Lamar Jackson at plus 500, tied with Patrick Mahomes at plus 500. So those 3 guys, it's kind of like flipped, I guess you could say. So if you still haven't got your futures bet in on Patrick Mahomes MVP plus 500, that's a pretty good line to put it down on. If you think about it, I think it started at plus 900. Is that right?
I'll go check and see what I got it at.
because I think it started at 9 or 9:50. So it's working its way down. Jalen Hurts at 5:50. That's another guy who's been playing really well this year that could have a shot for that. But I think offensive player of the year, you could justify Jalen Hurts being there because he's just so much more than quarterback. He can run the ball too, and he's been proven to be a weapon for Nick Sirianni, who he had an interview with Pat McAfee, and my goodness, Nick Sirianni is just like one of the bros, is what it is. Is he just like loves to hang out and be a dude? And I guess he bought Jason Kelsey 2 kegs of beer so he would stay in Philadelphia and play. So that was part of his gift of re-signing in Philadelphia, was 2 kegs of beer. And he said, I'll buy him kegs of beer every year that he wants to come back because he's one of the smartest football players he's ever been around. So yeah, I think that's just one of those fun stories. Nick Sirianni, great guy, and good to see the Eagles doing something positive. I think I like the Eagles.
It's obviously he knows his players.
Yeah. Well, I told you guys, I mean, the best coaches have a good pulse on their players, and the best coaches treat their players as equals. I think the college coaches have a tendency to treat your players as college kids, whereas NFL, man, you got to be bros. I mean, you're spend so much damn time with each other that if you're not tight, if you're not loose, then they'll sniff out fakeness real quick, and then you'll have a crappy season because of that.
And yes, Tucker, it was plus 900 that I got Patrick Mahomes to win MVP at.
Oh. Steel trap.
I got Frank Clark to lead the league in sacks at plus 15,000. So really,
he has one. Does he have one this year?
He's a late bloomer.
Yeah, we need a couple big games out of him to get in there. Same thing with Sky Moore to lead the rookies in receiving yards.
He's getting more snaps.
You know what? Those are my free bets. So anyway, let's get into the blind nil segments for today. Who wants to start between you two? I'm waiting out to see what kind of comment we get, or what kind of blind nil segment we get from the comment section.
I'll start.
Go ahead, Nick.
All right, so this is Monday night game in Arrowhead. Give me your guys' favorite Monday night game of all time, or the most memorable, or whatever. So,
man, I was gonna do the 90, like the Joe Montana Mile High Magic, like just because that is such an iconic drive where you go down and throw the touchdown to the corner of the end zone. That play's been talked about so much. But the New England, man, when Tommy Brady got benched on Monday night at Arrowhead Stadium, in the game that the Chiefs in Arrowhead Stadium set the world record for the Guinness book loudest stadium, and Tom Brady, they show him sitting on the sideline getting benched in that game, was something that I will never forget. So I'm probably going to put a tie because I was watching both those games. But I don't think as a Chiefs fan, you can not talk about Monday night and not talk about Joe Montana in Denver going up against John Elway and doing what he did.
My first thought was it was a loss, but it was the Monday Night Football game against the Rams, where they scored 1 billion points in that game, which was, some people say, was the best football game ever played. Some are saying that. Not saying I'm necessarily saying that, but some people are saying it. But that was the first one that kind of came to mind about that. I know the Chiefs lost it, but like after that game, I was just like, "Whoa, Patrick Mahomes was pretty good." After that game,
that was crazy because that game wasn't even supposed to be played there. They figured that out. It was supposed to be played in Mexico, but the Shakira concert tore up the stadium, so they had to move the game to playing in LA at the Coliseum. And I remember they had the Chainsmokers performing like before the game. I'm like, how did they get all this stuff figured out in like 4 days? They had Jay-Z and Beyonce were walking around, and I just remember the Coliseum, they were renovating the press box, so we were in like basically like trailers up on top of the stadium, and yeah, I remember the crowd, the people sitting right below us in the press box. They were enjoying themselves in the way that Californians do with what they were smoking, and it was getting into the press box. And it was a very interesting situation. It was a very interesting atmosphere in the press box during that, those 2 20-minute segments.
That's cool. I think too, when you look at a night game, the Coliseum, the LA Coliseum has like some of like, it's how people talk about music sound from like digital to like music sound from like vinyl on an album. I love the light at the Coliseum on night games because it looks so like vintage, like it looks like old school, like they're using like actual non-LED lights or fluorescent bulbs or whatever, halogen bulbs from back in the day. So yeah, it gives it a vibey feel, that Monday night game. This is a weird one, but I'm gonna have to go with one that I was a part of, and it was the 06 Cardinals versus the Bears. And I believe it was like the first Monday night game in Arizona forever. We had the new stadium that year in 06, and we were up on them. Bears were undefeated, and we were up on them. And then they didn't score a single offensive touchdown, and they beat us. They beat us like 24-21 or 27 something. And so we had fullbacks went the wrong way one time, and Matt Leinart got sacked. He's a lefty, so it came from the right. We slid left. The fullbacks went left. And then the fumble 6, Devin Hester had a punt return, another fumble 6 from Edgerrin James. And then I remember we had the ball, we drove it late, and we had a field goal to win it, and our kicker missed it. And it was like, and I remember like, oh, we missed it, like could have won. And I remember the other team coming on the Bears offense coming on, and they were like incredulous that they won this game without scoring a touchdown. And it was also the same time my boy, RIP Denny Green, did the rant that we let them off the hook. They are who we thought they were, crown them. I mean, there's so much action with that game. It was like
that was that game.
It was that game. It was nuts.
When you talk about not scoring a touchdown, all of the Chiefs fan I can think about is the Pittsburgh playoff game. That's all I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they lost without scoring. I'm like, yeah, that happened to the Chiefs in a playoff game. But
yeah,
I didn't realize that's cool. I didn't know you were a part of that.
It was my first start of the. It was my first start of the year too, so it was like wild. It was nuts. But yeah, so it was like wow.
That's cool.
Yeah, but that was one that was memorable for so many reasons. Like it would have blew up Twitter back in 06. It was 3 years before Twitter.
That's crazy. All right, everybody who's watching out on YouTube, we appreciate you for spending part of your day with us if you're watching live or if you're listening to the podcast afterwards. But if you are watching live or afterwards on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button and drop a comment. Let us know what you think about the content, things that we're talking about. But also, if you're watching live, you've got a segment, or you've got something you want us talking about, let us know what that is, and that'll be our final segment in today's show. So shoot us over a question, and the three of us will chat about it to finish out this show. But Tucker, it is your turn for your Blind Nil segment.
Before I get going, you guys know that I got kind of a sensitive stomach, and when it comes to like drinking coffee, not necessarily the best for it. But I've actually found out this, Nick. You might think this is interesting. Cold brew doesn't do the same thing to my stomach as it does as a regular hot coffee. I guess it's less acidic. So very good. And you know, the folks at Trade Coffee, they do a really good job of helping me figure that out. When I drink coffee, I like to have good coffee. I've been making it in the cold brew, put it in my little thing, shake it up, leave it in overnight. But they give me the best coffee. And there's, you know, it's crazy that we love to enjoy the finer things. Nick, you love the finer things in life. I see your Twitter. You're tweeting out all this Thai barbecue. You like good coffee, and we're not going to settle for blah coffee here at KC Sports Network. And with Trade Coffee, you can start every morning with something special. Let me tell you about Trade. It's a subscription service unlike anything you've tried before, because they partner with top independent roasters to freshly roast and send the best coffees in the country directly to your home on a preferred schedule. Their team of experts do all the work, taste testing hundreds of coffees across the United States every month to curate over 450 exceptional coffees that make the cut. Here's a really cool thing. If you go to trade.com/KCSN, they have our own custom KCSN selection. So you can subscribe to what we get there. You can try it out, and you don't have to worry about it. And if it's not up your alley, Trade will have whatever you want. You can shop their most popular coffees by roast or flavor profile, or you can take their coffee quizzes, which what I did, to kind of figure out what they kind of tailored it to what I like. And you can get expertly matched coffees that you'll love. So here's what you do. If you want to support small businesses, I know you do, and brew the best cups of coffee that you've ever made at home, it's time to try Trade Coffee. Right now, Trade Coffee is offering listeners a total of $30 off their order plus free shipping at drinktrade.com/KCSN. You go there, you can kind of scroll down, see our KCSN collection as well. You can subscribe to that, or you can just take the quiz yourself at drinktrade.com/KCSN for $30 off your subscription to the best coffees in the country.
Love it.
Good stuff.
I know Tucker or Nick. I'll get it right at one point. I know Nick loves him some coffee. So
I love coffee.
Should have him do those reads because he loves him. some coffee and some trade coffee.
I do love Trade Coffee. And it's a great place if you're a coffee snob. It's a great place to find so many different independent roasters across the country, and they'll aggregate and send it to you because there's so many. There's a lot here in Kansas City, and there's a lot nationally. And you don't have to go through the process where, oh, crap, I'm out. Like if you're a coffee guy, you know how much you go through. And you can tell them, hey, send me a pound every week or every 2 weeks or monthly, just depending on how you go through it. So you can fine tune it how you want to do it as well. It's a really cool thing because I've been there where I wake up or at nighttime, 11 o'clock, I'm like, oh, crap, I'm out of coffee. It's like, well, with trade, that wouldn't happen.
Just BJ though. Only BJ gets one.
Yeah. Didn't say hi to you guys. So Tucker, what's your Blind Hill segment for us today?
So I think we should talk about Patrick Mahomes. I think, shocker, this team's pretty good. And it's because Patrick Mahomes is such a good quarterback. But I think sometimes we can take that for granted. BJ, you had on your 10 things, you kind of talked about some of the accolades that Patrick Mahomes has done. Travis Kelce, you can even put him in that category too. As Chiefs fans, I think sometimes we find ourselves taking them for granted. And it's hard not to. It's hard to kind of make sure we don't get that Patrick Mahomes, that Travis Kelce fatigue. So my question to you guys is, how do we make sure that we don't get the fatigue of these guys doing greatness on just literally a consistent level? They're always setting records, always moving up lists. So how do we make sure that we are appreciating them in the moment while they're playing for our favorite team?
Find a comparable, right? Like go back to the bad Chiefs years and, think about when it was unfortunately our boy Matt Cass, Wayne Bowe, and compare it to that. Have a touchdown. They think back to the Todd Haley years. When he was in charge, and just remember what it was like. I used to do a pregame show in 2012 with Seren Petro and Curtis Seabolt, and it was miserable. Like it was miserable because we would do like, this is 2012. Like this is the year, unfortunately, Jovan Belcher committed murder and committed suicide as well. Had to do it that next day. We did the pregame show that next day. So it was some tragedy, and just look at how bad they were. Right. And you knew going into games, right? You're like, I'm not feeling this. And even on the pregame show, hey, what are you picking? I'm picking the Panthers by 20 today over Kansas City or something like that. It's like, just so have a touchdown. If you get that fatigue and realize that, look at other things. Look at, look how long Gronk and Tom Brady did it for too. Right. So just have something. When you do that, let's have something to compare it to. This could be this, or look at other teams in the league and their quarterback tight end combinations, and look at history, compare it to history, and it's like, damn.
Yeah. So Nick, we were joking before the show about, or even on the show a little bit about just content and just like what's good content. Like I was a content creator in 2012. I was at Arrowhead Pride, and we had to create content that wasn't just completely bashing, that it wasn't about, here's the latest information on the, planes that are going to fly over Arrowhead with, the fire Pioli and all those signs. Like there was some dark times, obviously, with the Jovan Belcher stuff that you're talking about in general. But yeah, I think giving context to what they're doing, whether it's comparing, to former Chiefs teams, that weren't that long ago. This wasn't that long ago that, we were just clamoring to be relevant. And now we're going, 4 straight AFC title game, like completely different scenarios. So I said, this is the golden age of Chiefs football that we're living in right now. And our quarterback's 27 years old. And he's doing things that have never been done. I think, Tucker, to specifically answer the question, I think the best way we can do it is to continue not glossing over the checkpoints. Like enjoy every step of the journey and don't feel like you don't have to put those superlatives out of, he's the fastest quarterback in NFL history to hit 20,000 yards. The first 67 games of his career, he has 162 touchdown passes, which is 2 more than Dan Marino had. You start throwing numbers out there like that and contextualizing, this is different. This is special. It's not just because he can spin away from Devin White and throw a sidearm pass for a touchdown that we've never seen before. The numbers he's putting up, we've never seen before. And I think just continuing to do that, that's why I shout out to the Chiefs communications department and all the interns looking up all these stats and always having to stay on top of these things because, there are so many different ways you could contextualize what he's doing and that no one's ever done this before. That finding new and creative ways to explain and put into context what we're seeing will keep people from, marginalizing or normalizing, I should say, normalizing greatness. And what we're seeing, because, we can sit here and say he's the best player, he's the best player, he's the best player, but giving context to it with some of those types of nuggets, I think hit home better than, just the hyperbole of he's so great. It's apparently very selfish, according to the Star.
This might be more of like a national conversation, right? Because it seems like sometimes that Patrick Mahomes doesn't get the national conversation, the national attention that it is. Because I know everybody in Kansas City thinks that, Patrick Mahomes is obviously the best player in this league, and there are some people nationally that will say it's Josh Allen, or some people that will say it's still Tom Brady. But I think that just trying to appeal to the masses is obviously hard, because you're never going to get people to agree on one thing. But yeah, no, I think it's really good to just appreciate, to just make sure that you're aware of all of the checkpoints. Because that your 10 things, BJ, on, was that Monday, was a really good way for me to be like, oh, holy cow, like he's doing stuff that's like literally never been done before in this game that's been around 4 years now. So it's one of those things where you just kind of have to take a step back for a moment.
BJ, this is a question for you, since you're a baseball guy, pitcher, and you can throw it. I must have watched that Mahomes clip like 10 times, 15 times, but not to see the movement, but just to see how he threw it. Cause he had it up here, and then did he just flick it? Cause then it went to a spiral. Like it was bizarro. Like there was no like motion. It was like did you see it? Did you see it? Like,
yeah.
How did he?
I mean, I have no idea how he did it. I mean, that's why he is.
Cause it came out as a spiral. It came out as a spiral from like just this, like just up in the air.
I have no idea. And he had one of the best linebackers in the NFL, like bearing down on him, and all kinds of crazy stuff that going on in that play. And shout out to, I think it was Justin Watson, who like put his arms out and like blocked a couple of guys who were trying to get at him at that same time on that play. But I don't know. A lot's been made about, playing shortstop and throwing on the run and all the different arm angles and all the different ways in which you move your body and you contort it. But this is a shout out to Bobby Stroop. We talk about him a lot. All Chiefs fans talk about a lot. He's really active on social media, but I'll never forget one of the things that Bobby, I think, had tweeted out, or he had told me when we were chatting during an interview once, that, they train for him to be powerful in awkward, physical positions, to where he is kind of running, one way, throwing back the other way, where a lot of these places, make jokes about Pro Football Focus and they don't know how to grade, players making plays like that because they see him do it and like, oh, he's just, out there doing things he shouldn't be doing. He actually trains those things. He's working on throwing the ball and doing things like that. So I think the baseball has a lot to do with it. Just a shortstop. You come in, you run to your left, you run to your right, you spin, you turn, you throw back across your body, all those different things. You throw the ball so much. And Andy Reid talked about this a lot after Mahomes was drafted. They just like that he threw the ball a lot in college and he was throwing it all over the place. Whereas sometimes, 15 years ago, they weren't throwing as much in college, and they had all these different kind of college offenses. When you get to the NFL, you open it up and you want to throw a little bit more. They're just not quite comfortable with it. Whereas Mahomes has been throwing footballs all over the place, Texas Tech, even back in high school, and obviously with the baseball background. So I think it's just naturally getting out there and throwing a lot. And that the fact that he trains to, throw in those kind of scenarios. Even the touchdown pass to Justin Watson, when you go back and watch, he is not only is he not on platform, he did a skip step to throw that football, and that's just to get the ball out quickly before he gets hit. And his ability to generate power in those positions is why he is who he is. That and just the vision. I don't know if that answers your question, Nick, but as a guy who played baseball like 20 years ago, I can't explain exactly how he's doing these things, but you can see from the way that he runs and throws backs across his body that is very much a skill set that you see from middle infielders for sure.
Middle infielders. That's short second, those middle infielders. Nice. Where are we on the Jody Fortson TD count?
What is it, 3? Is it 2 or is it 3?
You know what, Tucker? Look up where he ranks in fantasy football tight ends, because he got a couple touchdowns, and fantasy football tight ends are just brutal. And so if he finishes in the top 10 in scoring, I owe Nick the biggest apology ever.
I said
he'd get touchdowns.
I said he'd get 4, right? I said he'd get 4.
I don't know. You said you take him in the 6th round of your fantasy draft.
I told you.
Is the one that I remember.
I told you.
It's still really early, but if he does finish in the top 10, that's
Look
I
it
didn't
up
know I
right
was
now.
a fantasy. I didn't know I was a fantasy person or a gambling person. So yeah, what's the line? Hey, what's the line?
7. It was
7.
7. It was started at 7.5. It's down to 7. I think over under is at 51, unless that's changed last couple of days.
How comfortable are you guys with that? At home, Monday night, Raiders looking to bounce back. They've had some ugly losses, but they're in games. You know, they're getting their breaks beat off them. They're in games. So how comfortable are you with 7? $100, $200?
Probably about right. The way that the Chiefs played against the Bucs, if they come out and play like that, and the Raiders aren't on their stuff, I don't think it's gonna be close. But then again, I thought we were gonna blow out the Colts, and I thought the game against the Bucs, I warned people not to think that it was going to be a get right game for the Chiefs offense. So I couldn't be more wrong over the last couple of weeks. So take that for what it's worth. But, it's a division game, and the Raiders, started 0-3. They beat the Broncos last week. They're, having to dig themselves out of a hole. And from a Chiefs fan perspective, you love to play the Raiders this week because you get to bury them even further, have them start 1-4, which I think is like a 6% of teams make the playoffs after starting something like that. Starting a season like that. So I think because it's a division game, because it's under the lights, I mean, this game means everything to the Raiders. And for that reason, they're going to be fired up and coming out ready to play. Expect them to have some stuff saved for this game. And Devontae Adams is legit good. And so they're good enough to come and bite you if you don't go and play well. I just don't think we're going to see the Chiefs come out and not be focused, because we saw that at some level make excuses or whatever, what happened against the Colts. But if they play anything like they did on Sunday, I think I'd definitely take the over, and I would take the Chiefs. But then again, I wouldn't take my advice until I get a couple things right.
Have you started on your DraftKings, BJ, to just set like all your bets and do the opposite yet? Are we at that point? Are we at that point yet?
You know what, Nick? This is not a college football show, but I did that in the K-State Oklahoma game. I took Oklahoma straight up to hedge my emotions. Yeah. And then I took K-State in the under. It's like, if they win, it's going to be a low-scoring game. And then K-State won in the over. So you literally could not have bet the whole thing worse than I did to lose every bet.
I can't bet. I couldn't bet on the Chiefs. I couldn't bet on K-State. Like, I'm not the biggest Chiefs fan, but I watch it intently and I get hyped up. So I'm slowly becoming a Chiefs fan. But I could never bet on K-State either way. I don't need that kind of added emotion to already my emotion now.
Yeah. All right. Tucker, do you have another read for us before we get to this final segment?
Oh, you know that I do. And this is a company that if you've been listening to KC Sports Network, you know that we love. And we've been really talking about them recently a whole lot. And that is our friends over at Liquid Death. Listen, you might be walking around your grocery store and saying like, whoa, why is there like cases of beer? Why are there tall boy cans of beer in this bottled water section? And let me tell you, it's not beer, it's bottled water, and it's spring water from the Alps. And why is it called Liquid Death? Because it brutally murders your thirst. I can tell you right now, look, I got a can right here. It's crushed because it brutally murdered my thirst, and then I brutally murdered the can. I've got a lot of good experiences with Liquid Death. It comes in 4 different flavors. It comes in still water, regular mountain water from the Alps. BJ's drinking a can. I had a case of it. But then they've got the 3 different flavors of sparkling water. It's berry, it's mango, it's lime. And they also just have a regular like tonic type water, just a regular sparkling water that you can use it for a nice mixer if you do so please. If that's more your style, you can go check that out. But it's called Liquid Death. Brutally murders your thirst, and it's also infinitely recyclable aluminum cans. They're bringing death to plastic bottles. They donate 10% of their profits to reducing plastic pollution. Just something we love to see. I hate plastic pollution, so giving back to that cause is great. You can find it at your local Hy-Vee, 7-Eleven, Woody's, all those places, Roundman's. Or if you need to find a retail location near you, you can go to liquiddeath.com/KCSN. That's liquiddeath.com/KCSN. Go give them a little checkout for us.
You know, it's also good about Liquid Death too, is I have some buddies who stopped drinking and they will drink that on the boat just so it gives the appearance and people to go, why aren't you drinking? I'm like, because you go, well, Liquid Death. Okay, I get it. But murder.
I got to give a special shout out right now to Skylar Harrison in the comment section. He's telling us the Raiders are the same old Raiders, and if we knew what happened last year, and yes, we knew what happened last year. They absolutely blew them out later in the season, but never underestimate a division game, especially. And we've talked about before. Never underestimate an embarrassed professional athlete. The Chiefs have been known to play down to their opponents at times. I don't know if this would be playing down to an opponent or playing up. If you're looking at it that way from the Raiders perspective, but this game means everything to the Raiders at this point in the season. They start 1-4 and they're buried. It's going to be that much more difficult, and the whole world's going to be watching. So there's going to be a lot be made about this. Josh McDaniels going to be on the front, in front of the entire world, knowing that the season didn't start the way that they had wanted. So, and the other thing that you put in there, do you remember they stormed the logo before the game, Skylar had said, and the Raiders have a history of doing that. And they've done that before, going back to Lamar Houston. I'll never forget the defensive tackle that was there years ago had stormed the field and basically was out there disrupting the Chiefs cheerleaders trying to practice their routines before the couple hours before the game. And he was being really rude to a lot of the staff members and the cheerleaders, and everybody's in charge of the cheerleaders. So it has been a thing for them. And then John Gruden taking the extra lap when they did beat the Chiefs, and the memes that came out of that have just been absolutely phenomenal. So let's Skylar, I like the question that you had brought up earlier on Tucker is, as we just lost Nick. Hopefully we can get him back, but if not, this final segment will just between Tucker and myself. But Tucker, the question is just going to be, what's your favorite memory of Chiefs Raiders? So Tucker, we'll start with you. But what is your all-time favorite memory between the Chiefs and the Raiders in this long-standing rivalry?
The one that got brought up in the comment section was probably the one for me, and it was the Jamal Charles game. Was that the 4-touchdown game, right? He had 4 touchdowns there. 5 touchdowns, yes. If you haven't listened to the one-on-one episode this week, it was Jeff Schwartz and Mike DeVito. Jeff Allen wasn't there. Man, I would really love to hear Jeff tell this story about that game, because Jeff told a really good story. Jeff Schwartz told a really good story about how they just kept running the same play over and over, and Jamal just kept scoring on the same play over and over, and the Raiders were getting so upset about it. And hearing that story about it, I don't want to give it all away because Jeff has some great details. You should go listen to that story. Makes that game, I think, even better for me in my memory now, knowing that the Raiders were just so frustrated with it. And you could tell that they were upset with it, right? But just to know that story going into it, I think that probably is the one that sticks out the most in my head. Another one that sticks out to me, I just thought about this one, is when Patrick Mahomes set the record for 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns, and he hit, was it DeMarcus Robinson, I think, on that deep pass.
Because he started running backwards.
Yeah. I was at that game, actually. Was that the last Chiefs game I went to? I don't think it was. I think I was Chiefs Texans in the regular season when it was like 20-19 or something like that. It was not a very good game. But I was at that game to see the history that Patrick Mahomes did. That was pretty cool in that season.
Nick, we're talking about our favorite memories between the Chiefs and Raiders over the years, and I'll share one of mine because I got a few, and a few of them are kind of strange. Not strange, but not necessarily plays. I got really into this stat when I was working for the Chiefs as their team reporter, team insider. When they were about to obviously get out of Oakland, they were moving to Las Vegas. We knew there was only like playing the last game between the two teams there. I looked up the stats on the all-time record the Chiefs had at the Coliseum. And, with a couple years left, because there was one point we thought that the year before that the Raiders were going to go play somewhere else and not play at the Coliseum that last year. And then they got sued. There's just a big mess going on between the city of Oakland and the Raiders. Just Google it. We won't get into all those details, but didn't know if they were going to play there that last year. And the Chiefs had gone into, I think, a couple years before that, they were right around 500 as far as the Chiefs all-time win-loss record in playing the Raiders at the Coliseum. And I created this, talking this content, Nick. This is good content. This is stuff that I love doing. But I was looking up and I was like, I want the Chiefs to finish with an all-time winning record at the Coliseum against the Raiders. And so the last game the Chiefs played there, I think they had already had it, but I think they solidified it even more because it was also the last time I believe the last time the Chiefs played at the Coliseum was also the last time in NFL history that they'll ever play a football game on a stadium that was also a baseball field, because there was dirt on the field. And it was the last time that was ever going to happen. And I'll always remember that game for a couple of reasons. One, I remembered after they won that game, like, and that was DeMarcus Robinson went off in that game. Had one of the best games of his career there in Oakland. But I also remember before the game just walking around and, you know, just you're wearing red walking around the Coliseum, like people are going to let you hear it, even though like you're not playing, and people are yelling at me. I'm like, I'm not playing in this game. Like, I don't know why you're yelling at me. But I also remember that game because the new, you know, PR director, Danny Welniak, who's at the KC Current, went around and she actually scooped up a bunch of the infield dirt into these little like capsules, and she gave them to everybody in the media as like a gift, as like a, here's a keepsake from the last game played, you know, at a dirt field in an NFL game. But I love the fact that the Chiefs have an all-time winning record at the, you know, the Coliseum, which is such a historic place for the Raiders. Knowing the Chiefs got the better of them more than the Raiders got the better of them. So that's the petty stuff that I enjoyed looking up regarding that game. There are a lot of stories, but that's the first one that came to mind. And Nick, what comes to mind for you when you think Chiefs Raiders?
I think of what you were just referring to is the baseball football combo, and how god awful that O.co stadium used to be. I mean, it was a baseball locker room, and we had to squeeze into a baseball. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, this is if anybody's watching on YouTube, this is what Danny had given everybody. It's got some of the dirt in there. Pretty cool.
That's really cool. I like that. And there's nothing worse than if you got to snap a ball and you're up there at second base, so you're up there, you know, near you know, something like that, and you got 1 foot in dirt, right, and 1 foot on the grass, and then the ball's on the seam of the dirt and the grass, and it's like, it's miserable. It's absolutely miserable. So I was thinking of a different game. It was a Monday night. It was the Halloween game. It was versus the Chargers, so it's not relevant. But it was it fits into the Raiders fan lore, because those guys dress in costumes all the time. All their fans, and you know, they got the black hole and all that stuff, and it feels like the Raiders have been corporate now that they got out of Oakland. You know, I feel like there was a gritty edge to the Raiders when they're in Oakland, but they went east to Vegas now, so doesn't have the right feel anymore.
Somebody told me once, I think it was right around the time that Jeremy Maclin was just jawing with the black hole. Like, Jeremy Maclin loved going over, he loved talking trash to anybody, but he was walking over talking trash to them. And I remember asking one of the security guards who was there, who I got to talking with, because it was also when Marcus Peters went back, who's from Oakland when he was playing for the Chiefs, that one of the security guards for the Raiders was one of his high school football coaches. And he came up, and Marcus came up, gave him a big hug and talked to him. And Marcus wasn't the most like welcoming person to like strangers, people he didn't know. So I knew that he knew that dude really well. I went up to him, and I was just, because it stood out, and I'm like, how do you know Marcus? And he was explaining how he knew him and everything. And I'll remember that game because Marcus, it meant so much to him after that game, talking to him in the locker room of playing in Oakland, that's something I'll always remember. But also when Jeremy Maclin was jawing with the people in the black hole that are dressed up, Nick, like you're saying, I remember asking one of the security guards, and I was like, has anybody ever jumped over? Because I'm sure they do this all the time. Has it ever gotten really heated? And they're like, no, they just dress up like that for the cameras. You want to go to the people that would jump over, go up to the top and go up and talk trash. Go up and talk trash to the people on the top of the stadium. He's like, that's where you don't want to be, wearing a bunch of red right now. Everybody down here is just dressed up, wearing makeup for the cameras. He's like, don't go up to section 300 or whatever and start talking trash.
Hey, you want to talk about the Coliseum getting a contact high? When we rolled into Oakland on the buses for the stadium, it was like beer cans getting thrown at you. You could smell marijuana heavily in the air. And it's like at like 9 o'clock in the morning when these guys, they were getting after it in the East Bay. That's for damn sure. In Alameda, Oakland area, Alameda Stadium.
I just remember that I took a video, and I think the Chiefs Reporter Twitter account's still active. I don't have that anymore, obviously, but you can go back and find these videos. But every time we played there, it seemed like 3 or 4 years in a row that we played there, it was always raining. And it was always just gross. Because you always just thought that, you know, the field was a lot soggier than it should be for an NFL field with a little bit of rain. Like, it didn't have that kind of arc that had all the water run off to the side. Like, it didn't do that. But there were live wires that were hanging above. Dick, did you ever play there? Because it was the same, like, it was the visitor side coming down that tunnel.
I played there all the time. Absolutely.
Yeah, like those live wires right above where you come out and turn and kind of come out right by like where home plate is. But those live wires had water just rolling in, and there was like smoke coming from the wires. And I was like, this is unbelievable. I took a video and like zoomed in on it. And then like the next year we played and it was raining and it was the same exact thing of like the smoke coming off these wires. I'm like, I don't know if this is safe. Like you got a lot of people running out underneath there. But the other story I want to share, and this is me sharing someone else's story. So I was not there, but and talking about, the late great Len Dawson and what the rivalry meant to him, talking with some of the radio people over the years of how Len did not hold back when they went to Oakland and they played in that stadium. Kendall Gammon talks about like there was a cup because there was a hole in the ceiling that somebody like duct taped a cup, like a little like Petri cup to the ceiling to keep the water. And then he went back the next year and the same cup still sitting there. Like it was just how they fixed things. But somebody with the radio network, I can't remember who it was, told me the story of, one of the games fans were talking trash to Len Dawson and the window was open. So you could like hear back and forth. And he almost they had to stop him from climbing out the window to go get in a fist fight with this Raiders fan who was letting him have it. But yeah, I always remember that story about Len as well.
That's awesome. He's a competitor. That's for damn sure.
It doesn't go away. That does not go away. And also remember the press box for the Raiders is about the size of like a school bus. And you've got hundreds of media that are supposed to be in there, and everybody was crammed into one. And they always had one radio guy that was doing like live hits in the press box. Press box is supposed to be quiet. You're not supposed to cheer. You're not supposed to do any of that. Mm-hmm. I would just be like, jump up in my chair. You'd always hear like chairs slamming because I couldn't say anything. So I'd just kind of slam my chairs. But when you played in Oakland, there was some radio dude that would always do like the quarter end updates for like the radio. And he would like yell them. And the entire press box is listening to this dude because you're sitting like 10 feet from him doing that. So it was always an experience playing there. Or reporting there, I should say. I don't know what the experience is like playing there. Nick, you can share a story. Well, you played there a lot. How bad, like, give context to how bad it was. For example, the post-game presser area for the visiting team was in the Oakland Athletics, like, weight room.
Yeah.
The camera tripods that are shooting a post-game presser for the NFL team are literally set up on treadmills. And, like, coach is standing behind the dumbbell bench area. There's a black tarp. Right behind him are all the dumbbell benches. The media is sitting and like you open the drawer next to you. It's like the Metrex bars. Like,
yeah.
It's unlike anything else anywhere else.
No, it's a baseball stadium, right? And how many guys are on a baseball roster? Like 20 or 30, right? So that's your locker room is a baseball locker room made for 20, 30 guys. And you got 53 people, and -8 are trying to get dressed. 45 people are trying to get dressed and you're in a baseball locker. It was a baseball stadium. And they said, let's add football to this too. And we just configure the field this way. So the field was wonky, that the setup was whack. It was awful. It was a shithole, when you stayed there and we'd stay in San Francisco and we drive over an hour and a half to get to Alameda, and the stadium's in the middle of nowhere. It was just all around bad. And it's usually a day game, right? So it was miserable.
And I love that you have to run like right through the middle of the Raiders sideline to get to the visitor side.
Yeah.
Because of you come out at like home plate right at the 50-yard line, unless you go all the way around, which you can't because there's so many cameras and just stuff that it's a pain to get all the players. So they just run right through the middle of the Raiders like sideline to get over to their side.
RIP to the awkwardness.
But that being said, Allegiant, as much as we can say this, we went out there for the Shrine Bowl, is crazy awesome. Like it's a completely different vibe to your point, Nick. It's a little more corporate. It's a little like you feel like you're in a really nice Vegas nightclub. With music, the way that everything looks and sounds, all black and gray, and it fits their brand. But their brand to me was the Oakland Alameda Coliseum and like just these rough dudes that just you were going to go there, you knew you were going to get a bunch of shit, and they were going to give you everything they had. Whereas Vegas is just like a giant club.
Basically, yeah. The vibe in Oakland was I am scoring drugs in a shady place and I might get murdered here. That's the vibe from Oakland.
All right, before we let everybody go, expectations for Monday night. Tucker, we'll start with you.
I expect this to be a close game. It's a division game. It's a rivalry game, so I always expect these games to be close. But I do expect the Chiefs to win. They're coming off a big game, hopefully they can build some momentum off of that. Raiders are coming off a win as well. You can make sure to check out my conversation with Eddie Pascal for Raiders.com. That'll be on today's KCSN update. You can check that out. We talk about the Raiders and kind of what they've got going on into this game. They just come off a division game with the Broncos. They're kind of due for a win. The Raiders were, and they took care of business there. They ran the ball. Josh Jacobs had a career day, and they ended up with a win. So we talk about that a little bit, but I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a good game as well. It's always a good game when the Raiders and Chiefs get together.
It is. I think you got to pay attention to the right tackle and the D end, Max Crosby. I think that'll be a good matchup. We'll see how they scheme that. I think last year they ran some screens off it to sort of counter Max's bull rush and aggression. I also read that he's on baby watch. Max Crosby is, so there's always that. So he might be, playing for the baby, the unborn baby yet. So congrats to him. All that stuff. That's awesome. So I think that'll be the indicator. If Max Crosby gets shut out, then the Chiefs win. Like if he has under 2 sacks, he will win. And we'll see if Max goes against Orlando Brown too on the flip side too, because Orlando Brown has had some weaknesses sort of exposed in his O-line play. So we'll see however Max Crosby does is how the rest of the team will go.
You know what the beauty of that is? And I think Max Crosby is one of the more underrated players in the NFL.
Absolutely.
Just in general. He is an absolute game record defensive end. It's just too bad he's playing for the Raiders. But as a person, like Max Crosby has an amazing story. And I know he's got a podcast that he does on Blue Wire where he has some fun with it. But he's got an amazing story of, things that he's overcome mentally, substance abuse, all that kind of stuff. Like he's been very open about it. And shout out to him for doing that. But I do think it's interesting when you're talking about the matchup he has with the right tackle, considering they're friends from college. That Andrew Wiley and Max Crosby, our friends from college. I remember talking to Max Crosby at the combine when the year he was coming out, because Wiley had just got done playing with the Chiefs. At that time, Wiley was moving around, doing some different things, real valuable. And not a lot of people were talking. Max was sitting at a table at the combine, wasn't a highly touted prospect, doing his interviews same time that, some of the big name first round picks were on the podiums. And I went over and sat and talked to him. And I was the only one sitting at the table. And we talked about Wiley for like 15, 20 minutes. And he was like, yeah, that's my boy. And they were going through it. So it'd be fun to watch those two guys get after it again. But I expect the Chiefs to win this game. I don't want to say it's not going to be close. I think it'll be somewhere between, I think it'll be 2 possession win for the Chiefs, maybe like 10-point win. But what I'm really excited to see is we've been talking about Patrick Mahomes, front runner for the MVP, according to Bill Barnwell at ESPN that we talked about at the top of the show, is that this Raiders secondary is not what the Chiefs have faced over the last few years. And if you're looking for a get-right game or a game for one of the Chiefs receivers to really step up and have a big game, which we haven't seen yet through 4 weeks. We talked about it as far as if you're looking – I talked about it with Ryan Tracy yesterday. If you're looking for one area of the team to – kind of not to be concerned with, but surprising through 4 games. We've seen big plays from Juju, and we've seen some high, leverage plays, but we haven't seen that big 110, 120, 130 yard game from one of the Chiefs receivers. We've seen Kelsey dominate. This could be one of those games where whether it's Marquez Valdez-Scantling, whether it's Juju, whether McCole Hardman, if his heel's starting to feel better, I know he's playing through some pain right now, or even Sky Moore. I don't know if he's going to have that huge game, but I'd look for one of the Chiefs receivers to have a big statistical game that we haven't yet seen because the Raiders secondary, not great.
Probably Jody Fortson.
Speaking of Jody Fortson, I crunched the numbers, 36 tight end in fantasy right now.
Not bad. Not bad. So I said late. I didn't say.
Are his only catches touchdown catches?
I think it's
got some solid blocks too.
Doesn't really score for you in fantasy, but that might be very true. I've got to go back here to my page.
2 catches, 2 touchdowns.
Red zone Jody, man, that's what it is. That's what he is. Yeah,
he has 2 catches for 11 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Like the best part is his longest one is a 10-yard touchdown. So he has 1 catch for 1 yard and 1 catch for 10 yards.
It's amazing stats. I'm sorry, it's only going to heat up because this is we just finished the first quarter of the season. It's going to heat up.
I just love the fact that Patrick Mahomes has thrown touchdowns to 6 different players, and those 6 do not include Juju, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, or Sky Moore.
It's amazing.
Crazy. Well, everybody, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast afterwards, we appreciate you for spending part of your day with us here on this episode of Outside the Trenches. We know there's a lot of great places you can get your Chiefs content. We appreciate being one of those stops. Again, please like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Please follow us on the podcast platform. We've got a lot of different shows, a lot of different personalities that are all set up a little bit differently from one another. And that's by design to give everybody's got different flavors. Everybody's got different things that they like. And so we try to offer something for everybody here at KC Sports Network within our Chiefs coverage. So we appreciate your support of what we got going on. And we'll have plenty more content coming up. We'll have Derek Johnson and the defensive breakdown coming up on our YouTube channel. The breakdown with Matt Castle, Matt Hamilton, talking about some of the Chiefs plays from that win over the Bucs will be coming up on this channel as well. So a lot of good stuff coming up. But again, thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week. Hopefully talking about a Chiefs dominating victory over the Las Vegas Raiders to move to 5-1. Until then, we'll see y'all later.